He didn't really mention to Adrian Brody he was no longer the lead.
You would hope that they would have told him.
I think he found out maybe at the junket when they said, "And what part are you?"
Get back. Get back there, come on.
Adrian Brody was only 23 years old when he was offered what felt like an impossible opportunity, the lead role of Private First Class Edward Witt in The Thin Red Line, filmed in 1997. The project itself carried enormous weight. It marked Terrence Malick's return to filmmaking after a 2-decade absence, following Badlands and Days of Heaven, 2 films that had already secured his status as one of cinema's most elusive visionaries. Malick coming back was not just a film announcement, it was an event.
He got like an unbelievable sort of roster of big Hollywood talent.
Brody's role was especially significant. In Malick's original 190-page script, his character appeared more than any other, positioned as the emotional anchor guiding the audience through the chaos and philosophy of war. For casting directors and producers, Brody seemed like the perfect choice to lead an extraordinary ensemble. He had the sensitivity, the intensity, and the kind of quiet presence Malick was known to favor.
He just looked old-fashioned. He looked like a person of the period who belonged in this movie.
Needless to say, Brody was over the moon. At that point in his career, this wasn't just another role, it was the role that was supposed to change everything.
I just was so excited to get great work and work with a genius director and be surrounded by the most amazing actors.
Industry confidence followed quickly. Variety published an article announcing Brody as the film's lead, and his publicist arranged for him to appear on the cover of Vanity Fair's Hollywood issue in 1999. The machinery of award season was already quietly warming up. This was meant to be his breakthrough, his Oscar-level arrival. What no one realized yet was that Terrence Malick approached filmmaking, and especially editing, in a way that defied every industry expectation.
Now, it's true of, I think, film in general, but nowhere, in my experience, more extreme than with Terry, that he writes the script 3 times. He writes it when he writes it, he writes it when he shoots it, he rewrites it in the editing room, and can be completely different films.
He says it about himself, I find the film in the edit. Now, that is the ding-dong, the warning bell.
Malick is known for shooting enormous amounts of footage, often reshaping his films almost entirely in the editing room long after production has wrapped. Scenes are rearranged, characters are reduced or rewritten through omission, and sometimes entire performances vanish altogether, not out of malice or personal intent, but in service of an evolving creative vision that only becomes fully clear to him late in the process.
We shot 1.5 million feet of film. In other films, you may hear like, oh, that was a great moment in that film. But in this, it was not a shame we had to cut all those moments out.
He edits his films in such a way that he cuts everybody out of them.
Mickey Rourke, I think, was completely cut out of it, or maybe appears in sort of one scene. Billy Bob Thornton did a voiceover. Bye-bye voiceover. Lucas Haas, Bill Pullman are completely cut. Everyone has been cut out of The Thin Red Line.
And while many actors saw their roles trimmed down or significantly altered in the editing process, others were almost erased altogether. Even George Clooney's contribution was reduced to little more than scattered fragments. But the most devastating blow ultimately fell on Brody, whose experience stood apart in both scale and personal impact.
He wasn't fully on the cutting room floor, but there was a snippet of him left in the film. No. He is not in any way the lead of this movie.
Having watched the finished film and carefully examined the footage, it becomes clear that Brody's total screen time amounts to less than 3 minutes in total. For most of that time, he appears only in the background, barely distinguishable from the surrounding cast.
Brody
didn't even know.
Going to the premiere
He was
and
the
not
lead.
seeing himself on the
He was the
screen.
lead in the movie.
No.
He went to the premiere.
And they didn't tell him?
They didn't tell him.
I think he found out maybe at the junket when they said, "And what part are you?"
He didn't really mention to Adrian Brody he was no longer the lead.
You would hope that they would have told him.
And he was in it, but just like...
When he does step forward into clearer view, he often says nothing at all, his presence reduced to silent glances, brief reactions, and moments of distant observation rather than meaningful dialogue. What made the situation even worse was the fact that Brody had already begun the press tour, completely unaware of just how drastically his role had been cut from the final version of the film.
It's like...
He had no lines.
Around the edges.
He completely reshaped the movie.
In the edit, Terrence Malick just found his eye constantly drawn to Jim Caviezel, and he ends up being sort of effectively the lead.
That was probably the greatest loss creatively that I've had, and hopefully will remain that. Not being in a movie that is a dream project and you're already touted and kind of publicly put out there as the author's persona, etc.
It was extremely unpleasant, he later told The Independent. There was public embarrassment and a very real potential career disaster attached to all of that. I didn't know the role had been so thoroughly eviscerated. Looking back, Brody eventually found some perspective, admitting that he was fortunate to have avoided both premature praise and a crushing backlash at such a young, formative age. Still, the experience left a lasting impression on him, shaping how he viewed the industry and his own expectations. And not everyone who worked with Malick after The Thin Red Line managed to see any kind of silver lining in the aftermath.
Christopher Plummer, in a different movie, In the New World, said there was nothing of me left in that movie. Terrence Malick was obsessed with birds and he kept just cutting to birds. He'd say, oh, look, there's an osprey over there.
Terry gets terribly involved in sort of poetic shots, which are gorgeous. They're paintings, all of them, but he gets lost in that, and the stories get diffused, particularly in our film. I'll never work with him again, of course. I mean, he won't have me. Oh, I told him, I said, you're so boring. I said, you've got to get yourself a writer. My career with Mr. Malick is over.
Even Sean Penn, an actor with enough industry power to say no to almost any project, wasn't immune to Malick's unconventional process. Despite collaborating with him twice, Penn later expressed clear frustration over his diminished presence in The Tree of Life, a film that had once promised him something far more substantial on the page. The screenplay was the most magnificent one I've ever read, Penn admitted. But when I saw the finished film, I couldn't find that same emotion on screen. What unsettled him most wasn't just the lack of screen time, but the absence of clarity. Frankly, I'm still trying to figure out what I was doing there and what I was supposed to add, he said. Terry himself never managed to explain it to me. For an actor of Penn's stature, that confusion was striking. It revealed just how little control even the most respected performers have once Malick's vision takes over. The script, no matter how powerful, becomes only a starting point, one that may bear little resemblance to the final film. Malick's work continues to be celebrated, dissected, and revered by critics and scholars alike. His films inspire devotion, endless interpretation, and academic analysis. But for the actors inside them, the experience can be deeply unsettling. Careers are reshaped in silence, expectations quietly collapse. And sometimes the role you believed would define you fades into the background, almost unseen. If you enjoy stories like this, honest behind-the-scenes looks at how Hollywood really works, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next.